Hi there, I'm Noel. I manage human resources for Treehouse. If you're watching this, chances are you've landed a job or opportunity that involves working remotely. Great! The flexibility to work outside the office is a perk that not everyone gets to enjoy. I've worked for Treehouse for nearly 4 years now. When I accepted this job, I had no idea that working from home was even an option for a role like mine. I mean, to manage human resources, I had to be with the humans, live and in person, didn't I? But as it turns out, many of Treehouse's positions, including mine, allow for working remotely at least some of the time. The company has found ways to keep people connected. So for the most part, I've been able to choose where I work since the day I was hired. Initially, I decided to come into the office every day. I'd never worked remotely before, so that was my comfort zone. And our office was so lively and fun, I really enjoyed being there. But about a year and a half in, I found out I had a very serious medical condition. I was unable to work at the office for about 2 years. During that time, I ended up working from home 100%. Treehouse's team members work all over the United States. About half work from home. So although the circumstances leading to my remote work period weren't great, my situation turned out to be a mixed blessing. Working from home full-time gave me a real sense of the pros and cons of being a remote worker. I was able to better understand what it was like for the remote half of our team. I came up with several tips and tricks that help me work successfully from home, and I'd like to share them with you. First, though, here are a few things I enjoy most about working from home. I live an hour from the office, so for me the main advantage is that my commute is now just a set of stairs. I've gained 2 hours in my day. Remember how lively I said our office is? Well, lively can also mean lots of interruptions. At home, I'm able to hunker down and focus. I also enjoy dressing a little bit more casually, doing yoga at whatever time, and being able to schedule my hours for when I know I'll be most productive. I just got a dog. I'm so glad I have this opportunity to be at home where we can get to know each other while I work. Do you have pets? If so, this is another bonus. They'll really enjoy having you around. You may be thinking, I get to hang out with my dog? What could be the downside? Well, in some ways, successfully working from home can be more challenging than a typical desk job. Since you're not working side by side with your manager, the lines between work and home can get pretty blurred. The onus is on you to minimize distractions, stay focused, and deliver results, even when no one is looking over your shoulder. Successfully transitioning to remote work requires you to master a few skills, and that's what I'm here to share with you. In our time together, you'll learn about how you can create an environment that's comfortable, ergonomic, and conducive to getting things done. Make sure you know how to access and use the technology you'll need to be successful. Make your schedule work for you. Stay as productive as possible. And keep in touch with your team and the rest of the world. In most jobs, the workplace is already set up when you arrive. Typically, you'll find dedicated areas for focused work, like a desk, cubicle, or office, for collaborating, like conference rooms, and for relaxation, a break room or a lunch area. Wi-Fi is available throughout the office, and you're provided with the technology you need to do your job. When you work remotely, though, it'll be up to you to create these things. In order to make sure your environment is conducive to getting results, I have 3 pieces of advice for you. To create the right environment, I recommend dedicating a space for work, making sure that space is comfortable and ergonomically correct, and moving your body regularly. Let's talk about the importance of having a dedicated workspace. For the first year that I worked at Treehouse, I didn't bother setting up a home office because I so rarely worked from home. Even as I started planning to work remotely full-time, I questioned how much effort I really needed to put into my office setup. I figured I have a kitchen table and a lap desk that I can use from anywhere. How much better could an office desk be? But Treehouse provides adjustable desks which allow you to stand or sit throughout the day, and I really liked having that option at the office. So I decided to make room for one at home. And I'm so glad I did. My desk is the centerpiece of a workspace that really works for me. Also, I've been able to set up my workspace in an office with a door, which is nice. I know I can shut the door when there are distracting noises in the house. Now that I'm used to having the full setup, I can't imagine spending my workday at the kitchen table or on the couch. There's another good reason to set up a dedicated desk, or at least a storage area for work. If you work from your kitchen, dining area, or the couch, work materials like lists and other documents are likely to pile up. And whenever you want to use your table for other things, you'll have to clean up. Having a dedicated space for work will save you time and trouble later. For most jobs, you're likely to spend 8 hours each day working on your computer. You can avoid discomfort and even pain and injury by setting up your space so that it's ergonomically correct. Here are a few easy tips for making your space ergonomic and comfortable. I highly recommend using an external monitor so you can raise it to be even with your line of sight, so you don't crane your neck. To keep your wrists and elbows from getting strained, an external mouse and keyboard allow your hands to spread out a bit more than the typical laptop keyboard and trackpad. If you're sitting, try adjusting your desk and chair so your legs and arms are all bent at 90 degrees. Your forearms should rest comfortably on the desk, and your feet should be resting easy on the floor. If an adjustable desk is an option for you, definitely use it. And be sure to use an anti-fatigue mat, especially if you're standing on concrete, tile, or hardwood. These are just a few things that help me stay comfortable and pain-free during the workday at home. This isn't a comprehensive list, but I hope it helps you to know some of the things you can watch for as you set up your space for comfort. Be sure to stay safe. If you find that you're feeling uncomfortable or strained during the day, check in with your company's safety officer or someone in human resources. They may have additional ergonomic tips for you, or they may recommend that you see a professional for more advice. Let's talk about why it's so important to move. They say that sitting is the new smoking, because sitting for more than 8 hours a day with no physical activity increases your health risks. So the opposite is true as well. Less sitting and more moving contribute to better health. If your job is sedentary by nature, you'll need to find creative ways to incorporate movement into your day. You might start by simply standing rather than sitting when you have a chance, or finding ways to move around while you work. Here are a few more ways to get moving throughout your day. Find a way to take a break from sitting every 30 minutes when you can. You might stand up, stretch, or walk around the house. If you need reminders to move, there are several apps available that remind you to stand periodically. We've included some of those in the teacher notes. If you have a call to make or you're watching a webinar, consider standing. Your body will thank you. And as a bonus, you might find that the posture break gives you renewed focus too. If you work at a desk, try a standing desk or improvise with a high table or counter. Some people have had luck positioning their work surfaces above a treadmill. I've not had much success doing this, except for phone calls. But if you have the technology and you can do it safely, you might try blowing the cobwebs off that old treadmill or stationary bike and making a mobile workspace out of them. If it works out, this is a creative way to be in motion throughout the day. The impact of movement, even leisurely movement, can be profound. If you're moving rather than sitting stationary all day, you should notice that you have better energy. So be sure to keep moving. If you're starting a new job, do you know what technology you'll need? Your employer should tell you up front what equipment you'll need for the job. They'll likely have a standard setup that they ship to you based on your job duties. If your new employer has not mentioned equipment setup during your offer or pre-hire, I recommend asking about it. You might ask, what equipment do you recommend for my position? And what is the best way for me to request the items I need to do my job? More than likely, they have a different set of tools for developers than they do for marketing or customer service. It makes sense to ask them to guide you in this process. When I joined Treehouse, I had only ever worked with Windows. The MacBook they issued and Google Drive were both foreign to me. I found myself worrying that I was asking too many elementary questions like, how do I save this document? And what are share settings? I'm sure if you ask my boss about that time period, he'll laugh and agree. I hardly even knew how to turn my laptop on. Thankfully, he was patient, and I learned how to do what I needed in order to get my job done. Before I started, though, knowing I would be using tools I hadn't used before, I asked a friend to show me some basic differences between using Windows and using a Mac. Her tutorial was brief but very helpful. Then when I started work, I asked questions anytime I wasn't sure how to do something. This was priceless. Whenever I asked for help, people were happy to teach me. If you're working remotely, your employer may be shipping your equipment directly to your house, so you won't have someone sitting next to you that you can turn to. If you're unsure about asking for help, I'd like to put your mind at ease. People are generally very understanding, and they enjoy helping the newbie settle in. I've also found that these days, you can find instructions for just about anything using Google and YouTube. For example, when I'm unsure how to write a formula in Google Sheets, there are several videos online for that. So whatever your work setup is, and especially if you'll be using tools that are new to you, don't be afraid to seek the help you need. Even if you have used these tools before, ask your new employer if they can provide tutorials and tips and tricks. Treehouse has a handy list of Mac commands that I would refer to several times a day during my first months on the job, and I still open it up from time to time when I need to learn how to do something new. To work successfully from home, you're probably going to need things like this, in addition to a good laptop. You'll definitely need to have reliable internet access at home, or wherever you'll be working. Be sure to confirm that your Wi-Fi can handle the technology you need for your job. Make sure you ask how your employer prefers that you connect to company services. Is there a VPN you should use to connect? And what are the expectations and standards regarding internet and data security? Depending on company policy and the expected duration of your assignment, your employer may provide you the tools listed here or others. If it isn't clear in the hiring process what they provide and what you need to get, don't hesitate to ask for specifics. One of the coolest things about working remotely is that you generally aren't tied to a time clock. You often have the flexibility to start and end your day at a time that works best for you. Maybe you prefer to wake up early and get a jump start on your day. Or perhaps you're a night owl and get most of your work done after lunchtime. If it works for your team, go for it. There are some remote jobs where you'll need to have a more set schedule, a new apprenticeship or customer support, for example. And there will always be meetings that you need to attend that are set based on the whole team's availability. Outside of those commitments, you may find that your remote job allows you the flexibility to schedule according to the times when you are most productive. I'm an early bird. It's common for me to be online as early as 6 a.m. Of course, that also means I tend to end my day earlier than 5 or 6 p.m., which is when many of my coworkers sign off. I do a few things to make sure that my flexible schedule doesn't get in the way for others or leave them hanging. I mark my off hours on my calendar so when people schedule time with me, they can see my availability. I also try to remember to update my status in Slack and any other communication apps so people can see my availability wherever and whenever they look. I keep my phone handy in the late afternoon so I can see if any new messages come in on Slack or Confluence, two primary tools we use to communicate. That way, if an urgent question comes in after I've signed off for the day, I'll see it. As much as possible, I make myself available after hours for urgent or important matters. It's rare that something requires my attention late in the day or on the weekend. People know those are my off hours, and they try not to request my help during those times. So when something urgent does come up, I try to be available. Making yourself available outside normal work hours may or may not be something that is required for your job. Be sure to ask your manager or mentor what the guidelines are for working after hours and whether there is an approval process for any overtime if you're paid on an hourly basis. Finally, when I know I'll be off the grid, I let people know by setting an email out of office response and appointing someone to be the contact person in my absence. Have you ever looked at your calendar for the day and realized that you have a deadline you'll be unable to hit? Have you ever gone to a meeting feeling unprepared? The whirlwind can certainly get in the way if you're not ready for it. And it's especially easy to lose track when you work from home because there's nobody nearby talking about the upcoming budget meeting or looming deadline. This is why I recommend getting into a habit of planning your action items well in advance, at least a week ahead, 2 weeks if you can swing it. Here's what works for me. Every Friday afternoon, I take a look at what's on my calendar for the next 2 weeks, and I block out time for important things. I start by checking to see whether there are any hours or days that I'll be out of the office. If so, I block them so coworkers will know not to schedule meetings with me during those times. I also make sure to let my manager and teammates know about my upcoming absence so they can plan around it. Next, I look for meetings that require some preparation, and I block time to prepare and to rehearse if I'll be giving a presentation. I think about the deadlines that are approaching and reserve time to do that work too. The most important time management trick I've found is this. I always ask myself, what is the one most important thing for me to complete next week? I think if I don't get anything else done, I'm going to do X, and then I block time for that one thing. This way, when the whirlwind picks up next week, and it will, I won't forget that important work. This process helps me manage interruptions and stay on top of my work. I recommend giving it a try. I don't know about you, but when I stop working on a project, maybe to attend a meeting or take a phone call, when I come back to the project, it can take me some time to get back on track. So I like to avoid jumping in and out by making sure I have big blocks of time for focused work. Sometimes I don't have control over when meetings are booked, but when I am able to determine my meeting schedule, I'll group meetings together with only short breaks in between so I have longer stretches of uninterrupted time to get work done later. In a prior job, I was often booked for back-to-back-to-back meetings for hours. My 9 a.m. would end at 10, and I'd have to jump right into my 10 a.m. without a break. More than likely, I'd barely make it to my 11 a.m. meeting, and so on. This sometimes lasted all day with no time to decompress or focus, so by the end of the day I felt scattered and frustrated. To alleviate this, I've adopted another favorite calendar trick. There's a setting that allows you to have your appointments automatically set for 25 or 50-minute increments rather than 30 or 60. If I book a 1-hour 9 a.m. meeting, my calendar will default to ending at 9:50 rather than 10. This gives me and whoever I'm meeting with time to stretch, take a bio break, and be ready for whatever's happening next. So far, I've been able to get just as much accomplished in meetings, and when my day ends, I don't feel scattered and frustrated. Let's talk for a moment about chat notifications. At Treehouse, we use Slack for instant messaging. If you use a team chat program like Slack, I recommend learning to use the Do Not Disturb function. This turns off notifications and lets your coworkers know when you're not available. Even if you don't use a team chat app, letting your coworkers know that you'll be unavailable at certain times of day because you're busy working is totally fine. Consider it like closing your door in an office so you can work uninterrupted. I thought about comparing the Do Not Disturb function to leaving the phone off the hook, but I suppose I'd lose most of my audience and age myself by doing that, so I won't. Let's talk about tricks for staying productive during your workday at home. Starting with, you gotta wear pants. I know, it can be so tempting to stay in your PJs all day when you don't have to leave the house. But starting your day the way you would if you were commuting to an office is a boost to your productivity. It helps signal your brain that it's time to work, not rest and relax. That doesn't mean you need to get up and put on an outfit you'd wear to the office. The point is just to have something to wear for work that isn't the same thing you wore to bed. Yoga pants, jeans, t-shirts, and even hoodies are all fine options if your workplace encourages casual attire. And if you want to dress up beyond that, you totally can. When dressing for my day, I consider how what I'm wearing will come across in video meetings. The general goal is to be comfortable, but also put together and appropriately professional for your employer's dress code. Just because you work from home doesn't necessarily mean you only work from home. Instead of just working at your desk every day, you might look into ways to switch up where you work. This might mean finding a coffee shop with Wi-Fi, or using a hotspot if you have one, or it might mean sitting on your back patio and soaking up fresh air and sunshine while you work. Spending part of your day away from your desk can be a great way to recharge, so if you have the option, I recommend it. Especially if your energy is lacking, it can be tempting to work from the comfort of your bed. Unless there's a medical reason for it, I recommend that you resist that urge. It's one thing if you're sick, or if you're just checking in for a few minutes first thing in the morning or last thing before you go to sleep. But in my experience, working in an environment that is intended for rest almost never results in being more productive. Also, reclining in a bed is not ergonomically ideal. If you get into a habit of working that way, you're setting yourself up for a potential injury or at least a really sore neck. I don't know about you, but working in a silent space for long tends to make me feel isolated. I like having something happening in the background, so I play music whenever I'm not in a meeting. I've put together a playlist that works for me, a combination of upbeat but easy tunes. You might like movie soundtracks without lyrics, white noise, nature sounds, Reiki radio. There are a lot of options. I recommend creating a few playlists that you enjoy. If you're interested, I've included some ideas in the teacher notes. So, you're wearing pants, you're getting out once in a while, and your productivity playlist is on. What else can you do to stay productive? Consider trying some time management tricks. I'd like to tell you about one called the Pomodoro technique. The goal of the Pomodoro technique is to reduce the impact of interruptions and help you focus. If you have a large block of time available and some projects that require focus, I recommend giving it a try. With this technique, you use a kitchen timer to break down work into 25-minute intervals separated by short breaks. The intervals are called pomodoros, the Italian word for tomato, named after the tomato-shaped kitchen timer that was originally used. Here's how it works. First, you plan. You decide what you're going to get done and jot down how long you think it'll take. Then you set a timer for 25 minutes, and during that 25 minutes, you work interruption-free on that task. When your timer rings, you've completed one Pomodoro. You have the option to take a 5-minute break or work another Pomodoro. If you've worked fewer than 4 in a row without a break, you get a 5-minute break. Once you've worked 4 Pomodoros in a row, you've earned a longer break and can take up to 30 minutes off. Starting with planning and recording your to-do items enables you to estimate the effort your tasks require. As you complete Pomodoros, record them with a check mark, which can give you a sense of accomplishment and provide raw data so you know for next time, how long does this kind of task really take? This is just one way to help yourself focus. Whether or not you use hacks like this, working at home can be a great way to find those little tricks that work for you. Because when you're working alone, you aren't tied into the way other people expect you to work. Maybe you like to blast music while you build a spreadsheet. Do it. If you're a fitness enthusiast and want to do a few sit-ups or jumping jacks between tasks, you can do that too. The point is to figure out what helps you get the work done and then make it happen. If you're working remotely, your jumping jacks and loud music won't disturb anyone. So get creative and figure out what little tricks work for you. If you work with a remote team, chances are they have tools in place for staying connected. You're especially likely to be attending video calls, at least occasionally, so let's talk about that for a moment. Whether your company uses Google Hangouts, Zoom, GoToMeeting, or another software, you'll want to make sure you get very familiar with the technology right away. If you have an important meeting coming up, or if you're still learning the software, ask a coworker if they're willing to do a trial run with you, so you can be sure you know how to use key functions and how to troubleshoot if things don't go as planned. Here are a few examples of things you'll want to do before your first video meeting. If you and your teammates can't hear each other, do you know how to check the microphone and speaker settings? In the event of an issue during the meeting, you'll want to be able to troubleshoot things quickly, especially if you're presenting to the group. If you'll be collaborating on a project or presenting images to an audience, be sure you know how to use screen share. And when screen sharing, if you have multiple active tabs, or if you have an external monitor and a laptop, you'll want to be sure to know how to select just the things you want to share. Speaking of only sharing what matters, remember to turn off notifications whenever you're in a video meeting to avoid any potentially embarrassing situations during the call. I generally mute myself during a group meeting to avoid creating distraction if there's any kind of noise in my background. For some reason, my neighbors always seem to be doing loud yard work or household renovation when I'm in a meeting. Best if everyone doesn't have to listen to that. So you'll want to know how to mute yourself. And if you're the presenter, you may also want to know how to mute others for the same reason. What about viewing your coworkers? Do you want to see all attendees at once or just the person who's speaking? You can change that view to suit your needs. I like to see everyone at once and position the images of others at the top of my laptop screen, so when I'm looking at their face, I'm also looking right at the laptop camera. This creates a feeling of eye contact as much as possible. When you work remotely, it's especially important to make sure that you're purposely engaging with your team and your manager every day. Your team may have daily or weekly stand-up meetings. If so, great. If not, you'll want to make even more effort to reach out. Be sure to engage in whatever messaging tools the company provides, Slack or email, every day. Let your team know you're out there. At Treehouse, we have chat rooms in Slack that serve as sort of virtual water coolers. Team members share things that aren't work-related to get to know each other in a way that would mimic what would happen if they were sitting in the same workspace. If your company has tools for connecting people on a personal level, consider dropping some photos or stories in there. The team will appreciate getting to know more about you, and you may learn that you have hobbies in common with others. It's a great way to make those important personal connections. I stay connected to my closest coworkers by scheduling regular video meetings with them and making sure I check in with them every day in Slack. Every company has a different style for communicating. Be sure to familiarize yourself with your company's process and style. You can do that formally by checking the handbook or by asking your manager or HR. And of course, more informally, you'll experience it on the job for yourself. Whether your team communicates formally or informally, here are a few things to remember. The top reminder I have for you when communicating and writing is to know your audience. Will your message be viewed by one close team member or a public group? How much formality or levity would be most appropriate and effective for this group? Even if you feel like you have a good understanding of your audience, there are some topics you'll generally want to avoid in chat rooms and other more casual written communication at work. For example, religious and political debate can cause unnecessary discomfort and distraction. I generally avoid these topics in the workplace. That said, I want to acknowledge that some company initiatives, like those we have at Treehouse, are intentionally designed to buck the current system. We have to talk more openly than is common about hard subjects like systemic racism, gender discrimination, and pay equity. It is imperative to us that every Treehouse team member and partner, including Talent Path apprentices and their employers, are able to safely broach these subjects and even speak boldly about them. I encourage you to work closely with your mentor. Get to know what the channels are at your company for bringing up ideas and concerns in areas like these. Learn about your company's policies and processes regarding non-discrimination, non-harassment, and most employers provide an open door policy, providing you with multiple channels for communication to be sure you can safely address ideas and concerns. Let's talk for a moment about humor. I don't know about you, but I was born and raised on sarcasm. It's kind of like a second language for me. So when I message something in writing, especially to a group, I have to remind myself that without the benefit of my nonverbal cues, my joke could confuse my readers and may even sting a little. Same goes for inside jokes. They're subject to misinterpretation by those who aren't in on the joke. I would just avoid these kinds of humor when communicating and writing. Finally, I would be remiss in my HR role if I didn't mention that anything you write down, whether it's shared with a group or with one person, is considered formal written record. I recommend proofing your work by asking yourself, would I be okay seeing this message projected on a courtroom wall? That may sound extreme, but it's really not. I can tell you from my own experience. When I was deposed at a prior company, part of the legal discovery process included pulling all emails between people involved in the case. One of my emails they pulled was a casual joke between me and someone involved in the case where I made a Napoleon Dynamite reference. This wasn't legally problematic, it didn't hurt our case, but I was a little bit embarrassed to share that side of me with my attorney and her team. Even when I'm in video meetings throughout the day, I crave that energy you can only get from having an in-person interaction. If you're like me and you need time with people in person, but you work remotely, I recommend finding ways to get that human-to-human connection during non-work time. Here are some ideas. Maybe schedule a standing lunch or coffee date with a friend, or sign up for a midday yoga class, or break up your schedule by using evenings to get out. Anything that gets you out of the house and around other people on a regular basis is a good idea when you work remotely. It can be easy to let one day slip into the next and not leave the house if you don't have to. But isolating yourself all week long is a surefire way to burn out. Even if you tend to prefer being alone, you can benefit from getting out and seeing other people. One great way to get out there and make some connections is to attend meetups. These are meetings, usually scheduled in the evening, where people gather to share best practices in a specific field or to network with others and work toward a common cause. Attending meetups is a great way to get human connection and build professional relationships and learn whether or not you work remotely. You'll find some resources for researching meetups in the teacher notes. Check it out. Thank you for spending some time with me. As a reminder, we discussed these tips and tricks for making remote work work for you. We learned to create an environment that is comfortable, ergonomic, and conducive to getting stuff done. We talked about the importance of making sure you know how to access and use the technology you'll need in order to be successful in your role. You have some tricks up your sleeve for mastering your schedule and conquering the whirlwind. You've learned tips for being productive, including my favorite, wearing pants. And we've covered how important it is to stay in touch with coworkers and the rest of the world. Working from home is great and also presents some challenges. I hope it's helpful having some ideas for making the most of it.